Okay, so it's good to see everyone. Our portion today is Tissa in the Eitz Chaim. We're on page 523. Whatever edition of Chumash you have, look for Tissa, which is Exodus chapter 30, verse 11. Exodus 30, beginning with verse 11. Okay, so Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So remember again, when we see a Torah portion begin seemingly in the middle of a chapter, as this week's portion does with verse 11, we have to remember that chapter and verse came after the rabbis, and for some reason a chapter and verse came from the church fathers. Why they wanted to have a different system, well, I can understand why they wanted to have a different system than the rabbinic system for breaking down the Bible, but it's just interesting when Torah portions don't start at the beginning of a chapter. So we're in the midst of the description of the how the Mishkan, the tabernacle, is to be built, and everything that was supposed to be used in the Mishkan. So last week's portion, Tissa, mainly the eternal light, the Ner Tamid, and also all the vestments of the Kohanim. So we finish with a couple more things about items that will be used in the tabernacle, and then we get into the golden calf incident. So we'll get into a lot of this today, but the portion begins with this. So on 523, Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. So now Moses' name gets mentioned again. Remember last week in Tissa, his name wasn't mentioned at all. Now God speaks to Moses saying, Ki tisa et rosh b'nei Yisrael. When you lift up, I'm translating literally, when you lift up the head of, or the heads of the children of Israel, lifkudehem, according to their enrollment, v'natnu ish kofer nafsho. Each person should give kofer nafsho, which is translated here as a ransom for himself, or an atonement. Well, atonement would be kapara. So this is kofer. So it's a different word, same root, different word. So a ransom for himself, la Adonai, to God, bifkod otam, on being enrolled. So in other words, this is a fancy way of saying that Moses is going to count the people. And to count the people, in order to count the people as a ransom for each person, velo yihiyeh, I'm on 524, velo yihiyeh vahem negef bifkodotam, and there shouldn't be a plague, or a plague shouldn't come upon them when being enrolled. And what is this atonement so that plague doesn't come upon them? Zeyitnu, this is what they should give. Kol ha'over al ha'pikudim, all those who are going through the enrollment. Machatzit hashekel b'shekel hakodesh, a half shekel according to the holy shekel, or the sacred shekel. Esrim gerah hashekel. This doesn't help, but the shekel is 20 gerahs. Okay, so we don't know what a gerah is either. So 1 shekel equals 20 gerahs. Machatzit hashekel, the half shekel, truma ladonai, is an offering, or a lift up offering to God. Okay, so we're told here, so in the midst of the details of how the tabernacle is to be built, is this detail of how a half shekel is supposed to be collected from everybody as ransom for their bodies as they are. It's kind of as they are being counted. So the census is done through a half shekel being given by everyone. But we're told in verse 14 who everyone is, who is subject to this half shekel tax. Verse 14, Kol ha'over al ha'pekudim, all those who would be enrolled, mi ben esrim shana v'mala, would be 20 years old and older, yitain trumat Adonai. So anyone 20 years and up would be subject to this half shekel tax. So those are the ones being counted in the community from 20 years and over. We're told in verse 15, Ha'ashir lo yarbeh, the wealthy doesn't give any more. V'hadal lo yamit, and the poor doesn't give any less. Mimachatzit hashekel, from the half shekel, latet et trumat Adonai, to give as an offering to God, lechaper al nafshotechem, to be a ransom for their bodies. Avilakachta, and you should take at kesef hakipurim, this ransom, this atonement money, me'et b'nei Yisrael, from the people of Israel, v'natata oto, and give it al avodat ohel moed, for service in the tent of meeting, v'haya livnei Yisrael, and it would be for the people of Israel, lezikaron, as a reminder or a memorial, a reminder. It's translated here, lifnei Adonai, before God, lechaper al nafshotechem, to atone for or ransom for their bodies. It doesn't say this here, but the rabbi said this half shekel was collected every year. And this half shekel was collected by the first of Adar. So April 15th is our tax season when the IRS demands our tax forms to be submitted. So the first of Adar is when the half shekel has to be collected from all people. Well, it's all males over the age of 20. So it's an annual thing. So it just so happens that this paragraph also is always read as one of those special Shabbases from the first of Adar until Passover. When it's a leap year, it's from the first of the second Adar, which is why we haven't done this yet. So it will be not this Shabbat, but next Shabbat. When we read Vayakel, that will also be the Shabbat that we announce the new month, which will begin the following week. And it's the time that we take the second Torah out of the ark to read this very paragraph as we prepare for Passover. So there are 4 special Shabbases from the first of Adar until Passover that we take the Torah out of the ark for. And then there's a 5th one, Shabbat HaGadol, which is always the Shabbat immediately preceding Passover. So there are 5 special Shabbases as we prepare for Passover. The most common time for people to make an appearance at the temple in Jerusalem was with the Paschal lamb to prepare for Passover. In the Daf Yomi cycle right now, we're in the midst of the tractate Chagiga, which talks about the festival offering brought on Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, and how it's a mitzvah to appear in the temple on all 3 of those holidays. Not everyone necessarily could make it all 3 times during the year. You'd have to take off a lot of time from your farm and responsibilities on your farm and to your family in order to make the trip to Jerusalem. it's a major investment to do that. So not everybody was able to do that all the time. But I think that people made the effort for Passover with the Passover lamb. So because of that, people needed to prepare for getting to the temple. So first is bringing the half shekel with them, or sending it in as the half shekel tax. Then it's a reminder of Purim and Shabbat Zachor. Then it is Shabbat Parah. Maybe it's reverse order. Parah comes before Zachor, with the red heifer that we're supposed to be in a state of purity. And then there's Shabbat HaChodesh as well, 2 weeks before Passover, in which we are reminded of the laws of how the first Passover in Egypt was observed. So these special Shabboses get us ready for Passover. So we know when the first of these special Shabboses occur, which will be next week, we know then that Passover is about 6 weeks away, 6 or 7 weeks away. Okay, so that's one thing about this section, about which is for Shabbat Shekalim. The other is this unusual idea that Moses just isn't counting the people directly. Why isn't he just counting them? Even if it's from age of 20 up, why doesn't God just say, count the people? What is this idea of having an atonement for your body that you need to give this half shekel tax as a sense of ransom for yourself? What's wrong with counting? What is at stake that you need to pay this half shekel in order to redeem yourself? So if we look below the line on 523, we'll get some ideas about that. So we begin with the very last 2 lines on the left-hand column. Where it says number 12, we can skip that first paragraph there, but then this indirect manner. So we're on the bottom left column on 523. This indirect manner of taking a census, having everyone give a standard coin, and then counting coins instead of people, originally may have been rooted in a superstitious fear of the evil eye. Okay, so it could be this superstition. And there are many people of Ashkenazi heritage still maintain some connection to the evil eye, and we maintain some of these superstitions within synagogue practice today. So evil eye. So I often go poo 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 when saying something good about my family, poo poo poo, so that you don't tempt the evil eye. You think everything's good in your family, I'll show you. So if you do the poo poo poo, it's like you're keeping the evil eye away, not bringing any curses down. When we say the prayer for those who are ill, the tradition is to use the mother's name, not the father's name. We use the father's name when we're called up to the Torah for an aliyah, or for any other Jewish legal purpose that we're signing our name to a document. But we use only the mother's name for the prayer for those who are ill, because the evil eye doesn't know us by our mother's name. The evil eye only knows us by our father's name. Now, this just shows the ridiculousness of superstitions, right? If the evil eye is so powerful that we need to do these tricks to avoid the evil eye, why would the evil eye not know our mother's name? Right? So it's a silly kind of superstition, but okay. So that's one idea of the evil eye, that with using the mother's name when we say the prayer for those who are ill. We also, the evil eye is also, when we call up people to have an honor at the Torah, who is the evil eye? Okay, that's a good question, Lori. It's probably one of these angels, these ministering angels up in God's heavenly court. And there are good angels and there are bad angels, all part of how the world works. So if one is into angelology, then one way of understanding how blessings come to people and curses come to people would be through these angels. So the evil eye is kind of like the overarching kind of angel in charge of bad things that happen in the world. Okay? So another way not to tempt the evil eye is when we call people up for an honor, not supposed to call up father and son right after each other, or brothers right after each other, because it's the same Hebrew name. So in other words, if I'm called up to the Torah, Yonah Shmuel ben Chaim Ruvain, and then my father is called up Chaim Ruvain ben Yitzchak Eliyahu, well, ooh, there's the same name in there. So the evil eye is brought down. Oh, I'll show you for tempting me by having father and son follow each other. I'll cause something bad to happen. So there's that tradition of supporting the superstition of not calling up family members right after each other. And then finally, another time that we remember the evil eye is, God forbid, in a house of mourning. The tradition is during Shiva to cover the mirrors in the house. And the most logical explanation for covering the mirrors is that we're not supposed to be concerned. The mourner is not supposed to be concerned with how they look. That they're mourning, they're grieving. So who cares how one looks and whether all hairs are in place or not? But the other idea behind that is that the evil eye lives in the mirror. And by covering the mirror, the mourners prevent the evil eye from coming out and doing any more damage to the family. Okay, so the evil eye then takes on a pretty significant role in Jewish practice and in Jewish liturgy. Okay, so here, perhaps we're ransoming our bodies by giving the half shekel from the evil eye. So that by giving this half shekel, is kind of buying the evil eye off and hoping that for another year, you'll be protected. Right, or in parentheses, another idea behind the evil eye and why giving the half shekel, for knowing how many people, if you take pride in how many people are in your family, some disaster will befall one or more of them. So by understanding that we're not taking pride, but rather seeing this as a dangerous kind of thing to do, and there are superstitions around counting, right? And we'll get there. Yes, it's the next sentence. It is reflected in the custom still observed in some communities of counting indirectly for a minyan rather than numbering people. So I don't do this, but I know that there are people who will, back in pre-COVID days, when it was pre-Zoom and you wanted to make sure you had a minyan, you'd say not one, not two, not three, by counting in the minyan. It's the same with wrapping the straps of tefillin on your arm. You're supposed to wrap the strap 7 times around your arm. And some people maintain this idea about counting even with the straps, not counting directly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but picking a verse from the Bible that has 7 words in it. And you use those 7 words to count how many times you're wrapping the tefillin around your arm. So counting is a major deal. And depending on which part of the Ashkenazi world one hails from, that superstition will be taken a lot more seriously than in other parts. There was somebody, a former gabbai of our congregation who passed away many years ago, who would always say, if you asked him how old he was, he'd say, last year I was 92. Okay, so it's the same idea, because if you say how old you are right now, then you're saying to the evil eye, come and get me. I don't care about the evil eye. I'm saying how old I am, and then you're taking your life in your hands. But if you say last year I was 92, well, you're not saying it exactly, and you're still keeping the evil eye away. Okay, so there are elements perhaps with the half shekel that relates to the evil eye. So now, this custom is given a moral interpretation by traditional and contemporary teachers. What is it about this half shekel and counting. So here's some ideas. First idea, A, in parentheses here, coins are interchangeable, but people are not. Every human being is unique and cannot be reduced to a number, right? So by counting people, all right, so this is what the Nazis did by putting a number tattoo on everybody's arm, reducing the Jews to a number. And so people cannot be reduced to a number. Every human being is unique. Coins are not so unique. They're all minted from the same mold. So that's the idea why you're giving a coin. So I still have my unique identity. I'm just giving a half shekel. Or B, let each person give a ransom for himself. Life is a gift, and we owe God something just for being alive. We can never take life for granted. Okay, so the half shekel is thanking God for being alive. Benno Jacob sees the census as a preparation for battle, and the half shekel as an anticipatory atonement for the possibility of shedding blood in battle. So in the book of Numbers, where the census is taken and people are numbered directly, he's suggesting there in the book of Numbers, the census was taken, and the book of Numbers describes battles that the Israelites waged on their journey to the land of Israel. So perhaps the census is related to preparation for war, and therefore you need to give this half shekel as a kind of a sacrifice for that, or a part of the preparation or atonement for shedding blood in battle. Okay? Or C, the half shekel should teach us that a person is incomplete, becoming whole only by joining with others. So the idea of that giving a half shekel, yeah, why not give a whole shekel or some other whole coin? What is it about the half? So understanding that we, even though we're an individual, we're a whole person. When it comes to the Jewish community, we're not whole unless we are in community. So we really become complete with someone else that we join up with in the community. And it goes on, perhaps it served to remind the male warriors that the women and children who would not be going into battle represented half of the community. It could be that idea too. Men are just half of the community. There's still women back home who are not going into battle. Okay. D, after being counted, the shekels were to be used for services in the tent of meeting, right? It helps support it's like making a donation to Sharei Tefillah. If it's not specified where you're making the donation, it goes into the general fund, which helps support our budget. So the same idea back in the days of the tabernacle and later in the temple, that the half shekel went to support the temple. Now that there is no temple with animal offerings, we show our gratitude. We're on the bottom of 524 for being alive by giving to the poor. So we don't do the half shekel. Well, we could say that synagogue dues are kind of like the half shekel, or our charitable donations are also like the half shekel. Again, if we apply half shekel from 3,000 years ago, what is this? Let's say this is 1200 BCE. So 1200 and it's 12 and so it's 3,200 years ago, something like that. Imagine with inflation, what that half shekel would be worth today. Okay, and E, the fifth possible idea. In the early 20th century, the Zionist movement revived the custom of contributing a shekel to establish membership in a Zionist organization as a way of measuring how many people could be counted on to support it. Right, so there was that idea too. So the blue box the Karen Kayemet Israel, the Jewish Agency, the JNF box, is all about that. It's counting the people, but it's supporting the settlement of Jews in Israel as well. Okay. So there's all of that about that half shekel tax. All right, I wanted to go on now. So then it goes on to describe in verse 17 the bronze laver, a bowl from which the Kohanim would wash their hands before giving before working. And then there's the spices or the incense that is to be used, and then the anointing oil. Now, and this is where I want to get to, up to, we're on 527, the end of chapter 30, verse 37 and 38. Okay, I want to do that and then start verse 30, chapter 31, because this goes together with a comment that's below the line on 527. Okay, so we have the on 525 and 526, we have the recipe for the spices that would make the incense, and then there's also the oil that's to be used as well. And then it ends. That section ends v'ha ketoret, and the incense asher ta'aseh, that you make b'mat kunta. Lo ta'asu lachem kodesh yitiyeh lacha ladonai. But when you make this incense, you must not make any in the same proportion for yourselves. It shall be held by you sacred to the Lord. Right. So when you're making this incense, you're making it special for the temple. Don't hold any back for yourself, or don't make it as if you're making it for yourself. You're making it in a big batch for the temple. Ish asher yaseh kamoha lahariach ba benichrat me'amav. If any person makes this incense for their own personal use, they will be cut off from his kin. Okay, so this is a special formula only used for the tabernacle and later for the temple in Jerusalem. You can't use it for your own personal benefit. Okay. So in a moment, we'll look below the line. Chapter 31 now begins, Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moses saying, Re'eh karati v'shem, see, I have called by name, B'tzalel ben Uri ben Hur lamate Yehuda. I've called B'tzalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, from the tribe of Judah, Va'amaleoto, and I will fill him, or I have filled him with Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of God, B'chochma, with wisdom, Uvitvuna, and understanding, Uvida'at, and knowledge, Uvechol melacha, of all kinds of crafts or artisan skills. Lachshov machshavot, to make designs, la'asot bazahav, uva kesef unachoshet, to make designs of gold, silver, and copper. Uva charoshet even, and working with stone, lemalot, for setting. Uva charoshet eitz, and carving wood, la'asot b'chol melacha, to do all kinds of crafts. Right, so B'tzalel was this craftsman who knew how to do all kinds of crafts. Va'ani, and I, hine natati ito, behold, I've given with him, so to work alongside B'tzalel, at Aholiav ben Achisamach. So I've given him Aholiav, son of Achisamach, lemate Dan, from the tribe of Dan, uvelev kol chacham lev, natati chochma. And I have also granted skill to all who are skillful, va'asu et kol asher tziviticha, that they may make everything I've commanded you. So everything that was told us about the design, here are B'tzalel and Aholiav and some craftsmen who are going to bring the design into fruition. Okay, so we have Bezalel of the tribe of Judah, Oholiav of the tribe of Dan. And before it, we had the recipe for the incense, or some of the items that went into the incense. Now, let's go below the line where it says number 6 on 527. Bezalel comes from the tribe of Judah, the largest and most prominent of the tribes. Oholiav is from Dan, the smallest tribe. All parts of Israelite society were to be involved in fashioning the ark, right? Not just the ark, but also everything with the tabernacle, right? So one tribe can't say, "Oh, we're the special tribe because we have our artisan was chosen from all the other tribes." The fact that there's a Judahite and a Danite who are in charge, that means the entire people of Israel are represented. And you can make that assumption because the Torah and the Bible often uses opposites to teach everything's included, right? When it says in Genesis, God created the heaven and the earth, it means everything in between, heaven and earth and everything in between. When Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, Yom Echad, it was evening, it was morning, one day, right? So not just evening, not just morning, but everything in between, right? We're told in the V'ahavta paragraph, talk about these laws, b'shach b'cha uvekumecha, when you lie down, when you rise up, not just when you're sleeping and not just when you're arisen, but every time, all day. Okay, so it's a common way in the Torah and in the Bible to say everything. So by having Judah and Dan, largest and smallest, it means that the entire people of Israel are represented. Now, related to that is, if we continue in that paragraph below the line, similarly, the recipe for the incense, from which is in that paragraph from 34 to 37 in chapter 30, includes the foul-smelling galbanum. Okay, so yes, so here, if you look in verse 34 on page 526, we're told these are the spices. You have nataf, which is translated as stacked, S-T-A-C-T-E. I have no idea what that is. Shechelet, which is translated as onika, onicha. I have no idea what that is. The chelbana, galbanum, which is close to what the Hebrew is. Okay, galbanum. And then with that is livona, which is frankincense. Okay, so how these were translated this way, I have no idea, but biblical scholars seem to know what these ingredients are. But chelbana, translated as galbanum, apparently is foul smelling, but it's included in incense. And incense is supposed to smell nice, right? If you ever have smelled incense before, or any kind of aromatherapy, right? Some people like to light scented candles when they take a bath. That it's or just in some rooms, a part of meditation process. If you meditate for every day or frequently, you might want to light a scented candle too. It helps in the relaxation and focusing one's thoughts and moving distractions away. So what is this something foul-smelling doing in something like that? So the recipe for incense includes foul-smelling galbanum to teach us that even marginal, disagreeable people have to be included in the community. Okay, so you have foul-smelling herb with nice-smelling herbs. The nice-smelling herbs take over and make sure that the entirety of it smells nice. And so the lesson that Rashi is teaching is that the community is made up of all kinds of people. And don't worry that there are foul people in the community, disagreeable people in the community. Hopefully the majority of the community will offset the disagreeable ones, and they're actually necessary for the functioning of the community, for us to appreciate one another and to appreciate how different we are, and that we all reflect God in some way. This recipe for the incense, by the way, where we're only told about nataf, shechelet, chelbana, and levona, we're told in rabbinic literature more extensively what the recipe was. So those of us familiar with an Orthodox or more traditional prayer book know that after we sing Ein Keloheinu on Shabbat morning, Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, right? Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Then there's one more line, Atahu Shehiktiru Avotenu, Lefanecha et Ketoret Hasamim. Now, Ein Keloheinu makes sense. There's none like our God, none like our God, none like our King, none like our deliverer. And then who is like our God? And then we should thank our God, then bless our God, and you are our God. So you have four aleph, four mems, four nuns, four bets, and four alephs again, make up Ein Keloheinu, which, if you just take the first letter of each of those stanzas, spells out Amen, Baruch Atah. All right, so it's supposed to teach us our service is coming to the end, but we're looking forward to the next service where we start all over again, right? Every blessing ends with an Amen, and every blessing begins with a Baruch Atah, right? So that's what Ein Keloheinu is supposed to represent. And that song at the end of the service, yes, we're coming to the end of the service, but we're looking forward to the next service when that will be. So what's this line about the incense have to do with Ein Keloheinu and the incense? Well, then in an Orthodox prayer book, you have a section from the Talmud, or the Mishnah, actually, the Mishnah, which has the recipe for incense. And then the paragraph, which is in our Siddur, about that Talmidei Chachamim, Jewish students, bring peace to the world. Okay, so there's a section of rabbinic literature that's studied right here at this point at the Ein Keloheinu before we go on to Aleinu. So I don't want to get too much as to why it's there, but there you have the recipe given for the incense, which is more than just these four spices given here. There's sori, siporen, chelbana, levona. You have more, which is myrrh, kitziyah, shibolet nerd, charkom. You have kosht, kilufa, kinamon, which is in modern Hebrew is cinnamon, borit karshina, that is. You have cypress wine, and you have Dead Sea salt, right? It says here salt of Sodom, and yes, and maybe no, yeah, and all those things. So yes, galbanum is included, plus all these other ingredients are included as well. And there was a subset of the Kohanim whose job it was to make the incense. And that family, that Kohen family, knew what the appropriate proportions were of all of these ingredients to make the incense all the time. But again, the point is, you had some foul-smelling stuff that went into it, and then miraculously at the end, it still smells pretty nice. Okay, so there's that about the incense. There's just one more thing I wanted to look at, and we'll end with that today. So at the start of the second Aliyah on 529, we have, okay, so, so we're given right before it a reminder to observe Shabbat. Okay, so and then verse 17 on 529 is the end of that. While we're familiar with the Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat, so that's from here on verse 16. So that paragraph that talks about observing Shabbat is taken from right here in Exodus. That's 16 and 17. Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Then verse 18. Vayitain el Moshe, God gave to Moses, kechaloto ledaber ito, when he had concluded speaking with him, Bahar Sinai, on Mount Sinai, Shnei luchot ha'idut, the two tablets of testimony, or two tablets of the pact, the two tablets that, it's the 10 commandments. Luchot even, tablets of stone, ketuvim be'etzba Elohim, written by the finger of God. Okay, so now there's midrash about kechaloto, about God finishing speaking to Moses. So if we look below the line, where it says number 18, he finished. The midrash notes the similarity of the Hebrew for he finished, chaloto, and his bride, kalato. Okay, so we have to look at the Hebrew word there. The first letter, kechaloto, the first letter kaf is a prefix, which means when. Okay, so the word is chaloto. Now, if you just, but the vowel with, you can put all kinds of vowels there and you can get a different word. So the midrash suggests that instead of kechaloto, that next to the lamed, instead of the dot next to it, which would be the O sound, have the T sound underneath the lamed, the T vowel, which is pronounced ah, and you'd have, and put a dot in that chaf, kalato. And if it's kalato, God's finished speaking to Moses as his bride, suggesting, the commentary goes on, that when Moses received the Torah, he was as joyous as a bridegroom on his wedding day. So the whole experience, the Mount Sinai experience of Moses and God on Mount Sinai, is as to be pictured as groom and bride on their wedding day. And that the tablets of stone could represent the ketubah that represented the document for their marriage. The commentary goes on, the metaphor of giving the Torah as solemnizing a marriage between God and the Jewish people, with the Torah serving as the marriage document, occurs frequently in the Midrash. So does the metaphor of Israel's disobedience being like marital infidelity rather than simply the breaking of a law, right? So the prophets, especially Hosea, pictures Israel's transgression and idol worship as being unfaithful to God, as if the people of Israel having an affair with somebody else instead of being loyal to their first husband, God, okay, or their first wife, God. Sometimes it depends on the midrash whether God is wife or God is husband. Another midrash fastens on the similarity of the Hebrew words for he finished and rule, that is a rule of a game, klal. It suggests that at Sinai, God gave Moses general rules or principles from which Moses derived the specific details of the Torah laws. Okay, so either the word kechaloto could be reminding us of the marriage between Moses and the people of Israel and God, or it could be a reminder of God giving the rules and Moses having the deriving the specific details from the laws of the Torah. So this would seem to point to a human element in the development of laws of the Torah. See the comment to chapter 34, which we'll get to next week. A midrash reads the Hebrew word for stone in stone tablets, even, luchot even in this verse, as av bein, father to son. The Torah was not given to one generation alone, nor was it given only to scholars and leaders. It was meant to be passed on from parent to child. Okay, so this is common in the midrash to take a word and to see how it's similar to other words and derive a new meaning that way. So here we have the idea of the marriage of God and the people of Israel. We have the understanding of Moses deriving new laws from the principles of the Torah. And we have the idea from the word even, which is like a contraction of av and ben, father and son, put it together, even, as how the Torah is supposed to be passed down from parent to child. Okay, why don't we stop here for today? And because the next thing I would do would take a long time. So we'll stop here for today. Any questions or comments or about this? Okay, so I'll just make a note as we finish that this portion, the first two aliyot, if you look at it, are extremely long, and then the subdivisions 3 through 7 are relatively short, and that's because the golden calf happens in the second aliyah, and that whole incident the rabbis felt should not be broken up. It's a bad story. It's the story of the worst sin of the Jewish people right there at Mount Sinai. After they heard God's revelation, they start dancing around the golden calf. So this whole story, get it over with in one long aliyah. And that's what the rabbis, that's how the rabbis divided the portion. Okay.
Yes.
Jonah. Okay, wait, Lori has a question.
Oh, just a practical one. Are we back to 11 next week, or are we one?
Yeah. I just had to do 1 o'clock today because of an appointment I had to go to this morning. So we're back to 11 o'clock next week.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Shalom, everyone.